But but anyhow, I'm so excited to meet Aerin. I love her energy, and I feel like this time in the world we should learn to understand what mediumship is and how to connect. And I also feel that we all have this ability if we just fine tune. So I'm just so excited that she's here and she's going to be doing her thing. So that's it. That's all I wanted to say. I'm excited. Thank you all for being here.
Pardon me. So I'm really happy that everyone is here. I am Aerin, and it's wonderful to see you. I do appreciate you coming today, and some of you probably already have a little bit of knowledge, I'm sure. I see some faces here that I recognize, or some names here, and it's wonderful that you all made it in. Though I know it's Saturday, and it's really nice where you are. You're probably thinking I stayed in my house, so. But hey, I am Aerin and I'm in Florida now. I've been all around. My husband was retired from the Army and we have 6 kids. And we have one out, he's actually already in the Army. We have 2 that are twins and they just don't know it yet, but yeah, they're about to leave too. But we have a total of 5 at home right now. And I think that this is just wonderful being able to be online and being able to connect to people that are all over the globe. So I appreciate you all for coming. And again, I will be answering questions and taking them, as well as Marissa. She's going to be doing some of the chat. So if there's anything in there you want to ask, I'm sure she'd be glad to answer it. And again, Marissa is here from the Indigo Door. She is the host for today, and I am so very grateful for her asking me to be a part of the Indigo Door. So for that, thank you so much, Marissa.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I know my video might have been a little boring, but it's kind of like, who is Aerin? So some people know who I am, and I've been an author, and I am an author, and I've written several books, probably about 8 or 9 now, which you can find some on Barnes and Noble, through a lot of different venues like Amazon, of course. So if you're interested, I have fiction and nonfiction. Um, I've been teaching for a long time now, and some of my mentors are very well known celebrity mediums themselves, like James Van Praagh. And I just am so grateful for this transition. I was doing corporate work for the longest time, and with that, something didn't seem right. I had my own businesses, and I always questioned, our existence and why we were here and what is the meaning of life. And ever since I was little, I was kind of that weird kid, I guess. And I always felt like there was another calling. Little did I know that this was going to be the direction I would be. It would be a spiritual calling, working in metaphysics and teaching those people how to increase their intuition and live better everyday lives. And I have to tell you that the transition has made me a much stronger individual and a more peaceful individual. There's a lot of chaos in today's society, and I think that many of us are looking for some kind of peace, some kind of calm, and with so much going on out there, I think that so many of us are very sensitive to that energy, and it kind of pulls on us and makes us feel a little heavier, right? It can be a little draining, and we do what we can to kind of keep our heads above water, and it's not always easy to navigate. But what about our internal compass? What about our intuition? What are things that we can do to help ourselves every day to live a fuller, a richer life, to listen to that voice within, to trust that voice within? Is there something that is a higher power to us? Is there something that is helping us every day? I believe 150%. Yes, there is. I've seen so many miraculous transitions and so many powerful, if you will, so transformations of souls like yourself that have stepped into their own power and that are leading happier lives. Um, I think it's been a gift to really watch so many and supported so many thousands of students. But again, it's not something that I thought I was stepping into at all. Like I needed that help. But the funny thing is because I needed that help, I found this path. You know, we set out so many times to help others because we have this instinct that says, I want to do this work. I want to move into a state where I'm happier and I can share that with others. But the thing is we work so much on ourselves. Spirit helps us work on us first. We heal ourselves and then we share that with others. So, but I have, funny enough, I have a presentation and I don't think we're going to be here all the way till 2 o'clock. So you don't go, okay. And my presentation is not meant to be death by PowerPoint. Okay. So I'll just put that right out there. But what it is it can kind of keep me on path and then kind of share my screen in a way that if there's people that are visual learners, it will also help you. Okay. That way we're not here till 3 a.m. or something and I can go off on a tangent because there's lots of information up there and it gets scrambled sometimes. So, but I teach a lot on psychic and mediumship. I will say that for some people that is not a comfortable place, and I truly respect boundaries. So what I'm doing with this today is it's just a foundation, but it is about awakening your intuition. And if you are experiencing signs from your loved ones and you are questioning, am I picking up something that is from the other side? Is there another side? Is there an afterlife? Well, the truth is yes, our consciousness carries on into the next phase, into the afterlife, if you will. Okay, so we are souls first and foremost, and we are always connected, always. And so our loved ones, they are so close to us, and you don't have to consider yourself a medium or even believe in mediumship. You may not believe in it, and that's okay. One of the reasons that I do the work that I do is to try and prove life after passing, that it continues. Consciousness carries on into the next phase, but they are still with us. I've lost a lot of family members, over the years, and both my parents are gone as well. And it really took its toll. But I will tell you that at the same time, I know they're so close to me. I might not have believed that, growing up when I started losing family. But then I started having really weird experiences that I couldn't really let go of. But I still did because I'm human and I would brush it off like these weird coincidences that I would have. And I thought to myself, you know what? It is what it is, but there's got to be something out there. But in my family, it was always ghost stories, right? It was always fear-based thoughts. And if you're in today's society, which you are, you know what I'm talking about. There's movies and television and stories left and right that kind of make things that we can't see scary. And they don't have to be. They shouldn't be. That is society. That is viewpoints. That's the entertainment side of it. But the reality is that it is love. Our loved ones love us and are with us always. It's just, how do you prove that? And that's why I do evidential mediumship, where I shared that video at the beginning to be able to hopefully let people kind of hear a little bit about, I was giving a reading. I don't do many that I record online, but I threw that one up because I thought it might be good for some people to hear, like, you're bringing in things about loved ones that you couldn't possibly know, to share that there is an existence, that there is consciousness that carries on, and that we as intuitive beings, naturally intuitive beings, can pick up that information. We have to learn how to do it. And it's not meant for special people. I'm going to repeat that. This is not meant for special people. For some of you that are here, you're probably thinking, that's right. It's not. I know everyone has it. And for some people, they may think, that's not me. Like, I watched the movie, was it The Sixth Sense? The little boy that had the Sixth Sense with Bruce Willis. Remember that? If anyone's seen that. I thought that was special people that had a sixth sense. But what I found is that couldn't be farthest from the truth. We all have intuition, and inside that intuition is our sixth sense. That, our gut intuition, our mini brain, that in the enteric nervous system is kind of like our little mini brain, and we can feel things and we can acknowledge things. So this is something to consider, but I want you to know that I'm going to kind of go into this. I'm going to share my screen and then we can get going. And if you have questions, I'm definitely going to be ready to answer those questions. Okay. Okay, so this is a mouthful when you think of awakening intuition and opening the science from heaven. So I'm just going to say awakening intuition because I was choking on that, like, awakening the science. Okay, so let me get this part up because it should be letting me change the screen here. Okay, so kind of what we're covering today for those of you that are like, all right, there she goes. Death by PowerPoint, but introduction to spiritual connections, recognizing the signs from our loved ones, easy practices to hopefully help you get started on your journey, and then ways to maybe deepen your spiritual connection, understanding spirit messages, which I can guarantee you we're not going to finish all of that today because that is the longest process, but at the same time, it will start your journey. And then if there's Q&As, and then we're going to talk about the fact that there is a beginner course coming up, but it is more not necessarily centered on intuition, but if you did by chance want to work on your mediumship, then that would be something that you could sign up for. I will be teaching it locally. I teach it online now. I've been teaching it online for a really long time. But I'm going to be offering this in Flagler Beach. So I'm really excited to be able to bring it to those people that are local to me. And yeah, hopefully we'll go into that later. Okay. So next part is who is this suited for? Well, anyone that's truly really open to the spirit world, interested, that's curious about afterlife, doesn't necessarily mean you have to, like, I'm talking about mediumship over here, and like I said, I respect boundaries, and this isn't what this is about. This is really just kind of opening your mind to recognizing the signs and your loved ones around you, learning how to feel their energy, if you will. So if you're intuitively inclined, you have a lot of things that maybe are happening around you right now that you're kind of like, I knew that, I felt that. I don't know why, but I just knew that. So if you're interested in developing your intuition, this is definitely a great start. And then seeking personal growth and spiritual development. For many people, they just want to find, like I talked about, peace and calm to get away from the craziness of society. And they want answers. They'd like to hopefully raise their own vibration. Open-minded and willing to explore alternative perspectives. So maybe you've heard about, the stuff here, like you've heard about the metaphysical, the woo-woo is what I would call it for so long. Maybe you've heard that and you think, oh, I'd like to at least get a little bit of information about it. I can't say it's for me, but I'd like to get some information. And that's great. To have an open mind is what you really need. It's really important, if you ask me. Interested in connecting with loved ones in spirit, finding comfort through mediumship. So perhaps you're just interested in making a connection, not necessarily mediumship, but maybe you're interested in that maybe later if you find this interesting. So anyone also that is curious about paranormal phenomena, anything that's maybe going bump in the night, or maybe you're hearing your name getting called and you're like, what is this about? So that's what this is. I'm hoping to kind of go through with you today and then answer any questions. So a lot of times with many of us, we start to question our, who we are as a soul, question whether our loved ones are around us, question, what else is out there the universe has in store, or are my loved ones really that close to me? And usually we have these questions, or we think about this stuff after such experiences like the loss of our loved ones, like after the passing, for sure. Some people they would say that they're going through, some you might hear, a spiritual awakening, and then for some, maybe their family, is really very interested in the metaphysical world, the spiritual world. And then some people have had near-death experiences, and then it's a whole new. They kind of question everything going on around them because they're having experiences that they didn't have before. And then anyone that's just really curious about the afterlife. Okay, so things like that. Now, when we go into what is intuition, I think it's a really good question, because what is intuition and does everybody have it? Yes, it is something that we all possess. And intuition helps us connect with our spiritual side. We are a soul. Like we think of I don't know how many people get into the chakras or know about the chakras, but let's just think about right above the navel. They consider that I would say that's where your gut is, right? Your solar plexus is what some people call it. If you ever hear talk about healers and they talk about the chakras. And so when you think about it, that is where our soul presides, right? The soul of us is there. It's not here, it's here, right? And so think of it as a big golden ball, right? And it's just swirling. And that right there holds the key to so many aspects of why we experience what we do and how we connect. Developing intuition, it can guide us on our life's journey. Intuition shows us the signs and messages from spirit. Trusting intuition to hopefully make clearer decisions, feel more connected. I often find that we want to learn more on how to trust our intuition. And why is that? Because many of us maybe felt that in the past, our intuition led us wrong, led us down the wrong path, right? But is there really a wrong path? Did we listen to our intuition or did we listen to our rational mind? That's the question. Do we get into our imagination? And what is truly intuition versus imagination? So those are some things to consider. Intuition, of course, can be strengthened and we can learn to trust it more when we practice more mindfulness in our everyday lives. Well, what does that look like? So I want to kind of talk about that because practicing mindfulness in your everyday life really is starting to slow down. Some people would say it's quiet the mind. I don't really say that so much anymore. I mean, I use the word quieting, but I say relaxing. When we start to relax and let go, we have this constant need to be in control, this constant need to navigate and just take the driver's seat. And we have to. I mean, I get it. But if we are trying to lean more on our spiritual side, it's also very important to learn how to surrender and to just kind of observe the world around us as well. So it's not always easy to just go full throttle and then say, oh, I'm waiting for signs from spirit now. We have to practice it in our everyday lives on a regular basis. Then the signs will start to show. The signs will be just boom, 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 coming constantly at you. So the great thing about mediumship, the great thing about psychic development, but just coming down to intuition is that it has helped me, I know, and many, many, many students that I've taught just find peace, clarity, and better guidance. And they've helped others find the same. So it's been a beautiful journey. So recognizing the signs from loved ones. So here's where we kind of open this up to what have you experienced and what are some of the things that you have found like around you that maybe you question? Like some people, when they are thinking of their loved ones, maybe they had thought of their loved ones earlier that day, came into their mind, then they can see things like maybe they start to find feathers around their house or coins. Like maybe let's say you're getting out of your car and you see a penny on the ground, right? You were just talking in the car with somebody about, I don't know, it could have been your father that's in spirit. And you get out and you see this penny and you pick it up, and you think to yourself, is that a sign from heaven? I've heard that it is. Well, the first question there is the fact that you've already asked that in your head. The second thing is that maybe you were asking your father in spirit to show you a sign, and then there's the penny, there's the quarter, there's the nickel, there's the dollar, which you're like, wait a minute, is there more dollars? But like these coins can hold significance too, because one thing is, have you ever considered looking at the date on the coin too? I remember my mom when she was still here with us, she would say, so weird. I was just thinking about my dad, which is my grandpa. She's thinking about my dad. And then I was like, man, and I said something. And next thing I know, I see this coin. Like that's the next thing I see is it's on my garage floor. And I thought, okay, well, did you pick it up? She says, yeah, I thought of it. I'm like, was this a sign from him? And I thought, well, the fact that you just asked yourself that, what do you think? She picked it up and I said, did you look at the date? She said, actually, no, I didn't. And I said, well, take a look at the date. What was the date? And she looks at it and she goes, oh my gosh, that's so, she was like 1980 or something like that. And it was a penny. And I said, oh, well, I said, did anything happen special? Do you remember that would have been in relation to him? And she says, really? Well, Yeah, come to think of it. She said, yeah, yeah, yeah. That was a huge year for, and she went into obviously the stuff that was private to her, but it was like, okay, well, there you go. There you go. And it's really fascinating because a lot of people actually do find points and feathers. So very, very cool. Some people hear their name being called, or maybe they think they hear their loved one's voice, even though they have crossed over. But yet maybe nobody else hears it, but you do, or you hear it and then you look and there's nobody around, there's no TV on, there's no sound, and you're thinking, was that in my head? Did I hear that? You very well could have. You very well could have. For the longest time, I used to hear all kinds of like, growing up voices and different things. And it sounded muffled to me. Like I couldn't really make out what it was. So, if you watch The Ghost Whisperer or anything like that, it wasn't like I could just hear spirit talking to me. It wasn't like that. And it still isn't like that. Even as a successful medium, it's still not like that. It's very, very subtle. So many people experience dreams. I'm sure right now, if I said, raise your hand if you have had a dream of your loved one, was that a visitation? Is usually the first question I asked. Or they question to themselves, was that my loved one? I believe, and you can only take something to consider from anything I give you, but I believe 100% yes. And from all the students' stories, people's stories, 100% they come through in our dreams. And why is that? Why do they wait to come into our dreams? Because in our dream state, we can receive information just as if we had learned to meditate, because it has to do with our brain waves. And so, therefore, we are at rest and we are at sleep. We don't have the constant commotion of the everyday stuff happening all around us, right? We have the ability to recognize them, pay attention, even if it means because we're asleep, we're in that state, that theta state. And then there's certain smells, right? So sometimes people do pick up smells of their loved ones. And how does that sometimes come through? Well, it very often comes through like maybe cigar smoke. Maybe let's say you don't smoke, right? And the next thing you know, you smelled smoke. And the last time you smelled smoke, or a pipe, let's say, was maybe your grandpa, 40 years ago. And it's really brought back the memory of him. Well, a lot of people can get those smells because their loved ones are kind of like, hey, I'm here. You recognize me, right? So I love that. A lot of times, perfume, I was giving a reading years ago to this lady, and she says, we were talking about, I think it was her mother-in-law, is what I want to say. And one of the things the mother-in-law had definitely impressed upon me was smell white diamonds. And the white diamonds was her perfume. And so I said, you smell white diamonds, right? And she says, oh my gosh, my husband smells white diamonds all the time. He constantly is like, is my mom here? It's weird. Why does our room smell like white diamonds? And I was like, yeah, she's just wanting to kind of validate that for you, like let you know that she's here, she's visiting. So, a lot of people can get smells or visions. Sometimes we get like little sparks at the corner of our eye. We think we see something really fast. What was that? Um, and then there's also our mind's eye. What is our mind's eye? Well, I'm going to get into that a little bit later here. But the mind's eye is what we would call, it's around the pineal gland, and that right there, folks, is that is something that really, like, let's say you close your eyes. For those of you that don't know, some of you are like, yeah, I know what that is. I'm clairvoyant, right? And you might hear the word clairvoyant, and then there's people over here going, no, I'm not clairvoyant. And that's true. Some people, when they close their eyes, it's very black. But for some people, they actually can paint an image in their mind. So let's try to do that right now really quick. Let's just see if you can kind of know what I'm talking about. And a great way to do it, if you do struggle, is to kind of look at something in your space right now. Like, so if you have something, and so I'm looking over here at my weird little statue, my little mermaid statue for the beach. And I'm going to stare at it, right? I'm going to stare at it with my eyes open. Okay. I'm going to stare at it for a second. And then I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to try and recreate what I saw. All right. For some people, it's black. For some people, it's blurred. For some people, it's a very dark image that can come into focus. And for some people, it's just kind of like distant. And then for some people, they see blackness. And that can take time, but you can also learn how to do it just by doing that simple exercise. Stare, close your eyes. Some people like to do it where they can kind of close their eyes and visualize maybe the last person they talk to, or try to visualize like they're like walking in their front door or their car, anything. Just try to visualize a little bit. But that is your mind's eye that can recreate that image, and you kind of hold that in your space. And here's the thing, you don't have to have your eyes closed in order to do it. So you can actually stare at a blank wall as well and try to recreate that image. Some people like to do that. I think there was that old thing where it was like they used to show you, like, was it the Mona Lisa or something? You could see it, and then you'd stare at the Mona Lisa, and then you'd stare at a blank wall, and you could recreate it. It was really kind of neat. But you're more not, you're really kind of trying to recreate with your mind, and we call that the mind's eye. All right. All right. So how do we receive more signs? Well, relaxing for sure, right? I talked about that, relaxing, trusting, and just being ready, being open and being receptive. Those are huge. And then letting go of expectations. Some people put a lot of pressure on themselves to, like, I want this to happen. I'm setting down to do it, therefore it's going to happen, and that's it. And then they don't get it, and then they get discouraged and they think, well, that's it, I'm done, I'm not doing it now anymore, so I'm finished. But don't give up. Don't give up at all. Just try to start to observe in your everyday life, and that is very, very helpful. So a question to you to think about, if you have a pen, you have a paper, is what have you experienced? And I don't mean like maybe I've experienced it. I want you to put it down, even if you think it was possible. Put it down, write it down. I did have some coins in the past. I did have feathers sometimes. And if you're anything like me, you're like, oh, another feather. I better get my vacuum cleaner. It's like, oh, wait a minute. No, no, no. That could have been a sign from your loved one. Yes, but be very open, be very willing to ask spirit for signs. Ask your loved ones to send you a sign and to see how it comes to you. I mean, sometimes it comes in license plate numbers, in numbers, period, like in synchronicities. Like maybe you look at the clock and it's 111 or 222. I'm sure some of you have that. Maybe you look at a license plate and it's 444. It could be 444 KLM, whatever. And maybe the KLM is also like their initials or something, or was their initials, right? So it's really kind of neat how spirit will suddenly, it's like you're driving down the road and you're minding your own affair, and suddenly something tells you, look left, and you look left, and you look at the billboard, and boom, it's there. There's a sign, and you think, was that a sign from my loved one I asked for? Well, yes, it was. Trying to trust that, open your mind and start to immediately say, yes, it was. And the more you do that, the more signs you see. Okay. So understanding the language of spirit, how spirit communicates. Well, I'm just going to say it right there. They communicate telepathically, right? I always tell my students, we're going to play spirit charades. In other words, we're going to play mediumship. And so, it's not like what you see on television. 99% of the time, it is not like that. And it is very telepathic because we are souls that are consciously connected, and that part never leaves, and we receive that information, right? So our intuition guides us every day. It guides us, and we start to learn how to utilize it, from the time we're little, because of that, I call it the gut brain, our the enteric nervous system. So we start to feel things around us, and we start to surrender. And the more we can let go, the more we can allow that gut feeling, those feelings associated, to pick up information. And that information, of course, can also come through through our intuitive senses that we have. We call them the clairs, all right? But that is part of our sixth sense, and that information can kind of come through there. So feeling things. When our loved ones are trying to get our attention, again, we can sense things. The gut, we can sense physical sensations. Maybe we get tingles or chills, or we feel warm, or we feel a little cool suddenly, and there's no window open, or the heat's not on. So we can sense things, sense emotions. Maybe suddenly we feel a little, you know, down, or we feel happier, but it's like, well, that was strange. We can pick up different types of feelings, and we can pick up these feelings with the living people that are around us every day. Many people, will say, they could be going to work, and they were maybe like feeling happy, and then they get to work and suddenly they have a headache, and then they find out their coworker has a headache, and they've been sitting next to them in the cubicle next to them, if you will. We can pick up and sense other people's emotions, very much so, physically too, right? Like I said, the headache. Knowing, a sudden understanding or insight without explanation. Many of us don't realize, maybe don't think about it, unless, of course, you're doing this work. Don't realize that you are stepping in. Sometimes you can meet somebody and you just know something about them, or somebody says something, you're like, I'm planning on doing this, this, and this, and you just get this feeling, right? The feeling comes in, and the knowing that says, okay, I don't like this feeling. I know this means that something doesn't feel right, so I need to stop and pay attention. Some people seeing visual images, symbols, flashes of light. Again, we're going to go back to what I was talking about with the clairvoyance, being able to use your mind's eye. Sometimes people, let's say, and this was huge for me. Before I knew I was doing any of this woo-woo stuff, is what I would have called it. Somebody would be telling me a story, and I could be on the phone, I could be in person, and they'd be telling me this story. And it was weird because my mind would just fill in the blanks. I would sometimes get these little clips or these little video replays, or maybe just an image in my head. Like they said, oh, I bought this new shirt at the store. It's so pretty. It's white. And as they're describing it, I'm seeing it. And all of a sudden I'm seeing it before they're even finishing describing what it looks like. Like I can see the ruffles on the sleeves, and then they're like, oh yeah, I've got these big ruffles. And I'm thinking, wow, I saw that. That was crazy. But maybe I didn't acknowledge that I was. For a long time, I didn't acknowledge that I was actually able to visually pick up information. And the more I worked at it, of course, the stronger it got. And you can do that. Some people, again, they see flashes of light. A lot of times I will get a lot of questions about that. And it's like, it can be white, dark, it doesn't matter what color it is, but they can see things out of the corner of their eye, or maybe they in passing. And that's very common. Hearing words, sounds, or messages from the spirit world. So hearing, when I talk about that, it's hearing things, but we're not hearing it literally always on a physical level. We think it's on a physical level, but it is actually coming from within us, and we can actually pick it up telepathically. And we'll think, does it just call my name? And you go out there and somebody says, no, we're just sitting here watching TV. I didn't call your name at all. Like, I used to get that all the time. I'd be like, yeah, you did. No, I didn't. And they'd be like, okay, well then who did? So they will also, sometimes, getting into that space. I remember, strange story enough, I remember when my father crossed over, I think he was that one that said, what have you all been doing since you've been up here? She's supposed to do this work, right? She's supposed to help people understand their intuition and be able to connect and, do mediumship. And what have you been doing since, y'all passed? Because she's not aware of it yet. You guys really need to scream something, like scream her name or something. You can see my family going, yeah, we've done that. That doesn't work. She's out. She's totally like going, oh, what was that? That's weird. And here's my father going, well, hold my bear, because I'm going to handle this. And of course, that was one of the first things that was a huge trip for me, because I can remember that I was, getting ready in the morning one day, and I kept thinking I was seeing him. Like, and of course, for me, it was like, my mom was still with me then, and she said, well, you're seeing your dad a lot. That's really nice. And I was like, not really. I think I'm really in a state of grief. I think something's going on. I keep seeing him every time I turn around. He's there, he's there, he's there. I'm like, I think I need therapy. And she said, oh, I think you should just say hello to him. And I was like, I don't talk to dead people, okay? I don't do that. And she was like, as again, when I talked at the beginning, I was corporate, I was kind of black and white thinker. I didn't get into that. And she was like, well, and I can remember one morning getting ready, and I was thinking like, oh, I could feel something. I didn't know what that was. I kept feeling like this this presence around me, but I was visualizing this, like I get like almost like a flash, like a picture or a memory of him. And it was like, okay, this is so weird. And then all of a sudden there was a nickname that I didn't even remember. I had forgotten about that he had given me, and I heard it so loudly, and I went, oh, I knew that didn't come from my memory. That did not come from my imagination because I had forgotten about it. And I went, holy crap. Oh my God. And then I ran in fear, of course, because, that was like, at the time, I just couldn't digest that. I was, again, black and white thinker, putting the new world of spiritual around me. Yeah, that took me some time to actually kind of move through that process and get empowered and not be fearful of it, to know that it was love, to know that our loved ones are always around us wanting to get our attention like that. We just are so busy in our daily active lives. We don't pay attention to those senses, the feeling, the knowing, the seeing. I always found a reason to disregard it. It wasn't seem like it was something that I was going to say, oh, think about that. Yet I was very closed off to it. I didn't have the open mind that I do now. And it took me a while, but I'm just saying, pay attention. If you are looking for signs from your loved ones, you're going to feel them. You're going to have this knowing. You're going to have this, you might see something, and not always in that order. It doesn't have to be every single one. It can just be one little thing. It is so subtle, we almost miss it. We probably do miss it. All right. I'm sure there's times, even with what I do now, that there's times my loved ones, I might miss it because I'm actively busy with the external society, the noise all around me, that you have to be ready and observant of it. Okay. So let's see the next one. So when I talk about the clairs right there is what is the part of our sixth sense that helps us start to see and hear and feel and know. And right here, clairvoyance is that seeing. Clairaudience is, like I said, hearing inside your mind. Maybe you actually sometimes hear your name, but it could be something else. It could be, you got to go to the store today, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, that's right, I do. And there's your information. It's coming from our subconscious, right? It surfaces from the subconscious, which is always busy, 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 always contemplating and thinking about things, but not as much as our conscious mind. So claircognizance, it's a knowing. Clairsentience, it's when we can feel things, whether it's on that physical level or whether we take it on, like I said, about that headache, or maybe we just suddenly notice like the room feels heavier. I feel like, so, like I said, I felt my father, but I didn't know if that was it. It just felt weird. It felt like I wasn't alone. So sometimes, like, you could go into a really quiet space, or you could go into a busy restaurant and you can suddenly feel like, for me, I go into a busy restaurant, I get a little anxiety. So it's just something, like you may be experiencing too. That's our clairsentience. Clairgustance is when we can say taste something, but we didn't actually eat it. So let's say somebody's talking about, oh, grandma's going to make her strawberry pie for Easter. And you're like, you can suddenly just taste whipped cream on your mouth or something. You're like, oh my gosh, that just sounds so good. I can almost taste the sweet in it. That sounds exciting. And then clairalliance is our smell. So like when I talked about the white diamonds, or, from the spirit world, but it could also be something as simple on just an everyday intuitive level. You're talking to somebody on the phone and they're like, oh, I'm making pasta. And suddenly you get the smell, and while they're on the phone with you, and you get the smell of garlic or something like Italian seasoning. And it's like, that's funny. It's so funny. You're telling me you're making pasta, and I swear I'm smelling ragu. That's like so weird. But we can pick these things up. We can telepathically, intuitively pick these things up. And then this, of course, is the biggest question. People will say to me, like, well, I don't think I have those. I don't feel like that is something that has anything to do with me, but, I'll pay attention from now on, because it doesn't seem like I've ever experienced it, or maybe I did. I'm not really sure. So what I actually have here is I wanted to share this. I wasn't going to, but I think it is really helpful, and it gives people some kind of idea about their clairs. And I'm kind of just going to say them because this is one of the books I've written. And I actually have a whole test, and it'll actually ask you what are some of your strongest clairs. So you can actually figure out for yourself, like, and just because, you may notice one or two is stronger doesn't mean you can't actually develop them. Because if you start to kind of find practice in exercises or take a class or find things online or read some books, you can actually find some ways to test yourself and practice and whatnot. So if I was to say, are you clairvoyant? What are some of the things that you may look out for or question whether you've experienced? I have a detailed and vivid recollection of things that happen. So if that sounds like you, so can you remember things from the past? Like, oh, I remember that. I can actually remember it. Like, I feel like I can actually get a quick flash or an image in my head of that experience. I sometimes see flashes of light, shadows, orbs, and images. So some people do. I love looking at art, photographs, or going to museums. So if you're a very visual person, maybe you even love to do art, like you love to paint, that could be you too. I daydream or dream vividly at night. So maybe during the day you think to yourself, can't close my eyes, I can't see anything, blah, blah, blah. But sometimes I get the most vivid dreams. Well, that means it's there. It's just you're probably very busy during the day. So you're probably not noticing it or not recognizing it because you're not observing it. I can easily see pictures and images with my eyes open or closed. For some people, it's as easy as I can put it on the wall and I can re-see it. So let's say, I'm going to take an object in here and I can look at it and I can recreate it. Some people, it's very easy. Some people, it takes them quite a while. It takes them some time. But I've had students that have told me everything is black for me when I close my eyes. And then one day they started doing a lot of practice and it takes time. And the next thing you know, they're like, oh my gosh, I actually saw stuff. And that's very cool when that happens. Clairaudience. I love music and I often hear it in my head. So I am huge for music. And I swear, when spirit really wants my attention and I've been ignoring them, I will sit there and realize I've been humming a song over and over and over. And I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, time out. Somebody's sending me a song or I'm picking it up clairaudiently. I love listening to a great story and I will always lend an ear to a friend. So if that sounds like you, that could be a sign right there. I enjoy listening to the sounds of nature. This is something that I feel is golden and it does help you also improve your clairaudience. I like to listen to the radio or podcasts. I sometimes hear my name getting called or you hear some other words and no one is there. Claircognizance. This is that knowing sense. I know things sometimes and it's just instantly. I get lots of inspiration from out of the blue. I'm always thinking of new ideas and I enjoy writing. I sometimes know what others are thinking. Clairsentience. This is the feeling one. I don't usually like crowded places as I feel strange. That is totally me. I sometimes know when others aren't feeling well, either physically or emotionally. So maybe you can feel that. I can feel when others are in pain on a physical level. I can walk in somewhere and feel the energy. So the room, what's up, down, what's the vibe, you might be able to instantly sense it. Sometimes I can touch something and feel a vibration. So this is really kind of neat to do. And this is a little thing that if you want to ever experience and experiment with this exercise, especially if it's an antique, then it's even cooler. So people would call this psychometry. But everything carries a vibration. Everything is energy, right? So you can pick something up and close your eyes and feel the energy as you're holding it. Just close your eyes, surrender. It will be very subtle, but does it have like a little vibration to it? Does it feel cold? Does it feel warm? Being observant, being very open to the receiving of whatever you get without expectation is definitely something that will help you experience more down the line. Okay, so then we have, let's see, clairalliance. That's the smell. I can sometimes smell perfume when none is around. I can sometimes smell food before it gets cooked. I can sometimes smell food before it gets cooked. I can smell what someone is eating from over the telephone at a distance, like the example I gave. When hearing a story, I can sometimes smell something relating to the story. Clear gustance, that's the taste. I can sometimes taste the food that others may be making. I can sometimes get strange tastes in my mouth, like really strange stuff like smoke or tar. Sometimes I walk through the store and I can taste, like I can look at a can of peaches and I feel like I can taste it. And that's also a really great way to try and experience or to work and work with that Claire and actually try to pick something up and see if you can touch it and see if you can like actually taste it without eating it. I can think of a food and just taste a little of the flavor in my mouth. So certain things that are very pungent or very, very strong, like the moment I think I'm going to go put something that's like dressing on my salad, it might come off very vinegary to me, and I might be able to get that like I can almost taste that sour. Some people, it's the opposite. It's like with the sweet, they can, be putting sugar in their tea, but their mouth feels like it's got sugar in it before they even take a swig of the tea. Okay, so those are some of them, and that's not the actual test. The test goes on in the book, but that is an example of some things that we experience to some degree every day. We just may not be observing it like we would think. Okay, all right. So understanding symbols and metaphors, decoding spirits' messages. This is actually this is one of the harder things to do. Many of us that are very open to those signs, they're going to be looking for the things like the coins and the feathers, and being very observant mindfully and listening and seeing what you can pick up. But for some of us, we're going to take it a little step further and we actually want to learn. But what I want to do before I talk about that is, for some of us, we're not ready to go to that level. But what we might want to do is ask our loved ones for signs, or try to ask them questions. And a great way to do that, to really trust your intuition, to trust your gut, to trust the feelings, and to observe, is to ask simple yes or no questions to your loved ones. Like even things that you wouldn't necessarily know, but ask for things maybe to start, things that you know to see how it feels, but ask things that you don't know. So let's say you're going to ask your grandmother a question, and maybe you ask her, you observe how you're feeling. So is it like, was, let's say she made a lot of warm baked bread, and you say, did you make a lot of warm baked bread? How do you feel? Is it a clenching as a no, or is it an open freeing because that's what she did and you can almost smell that bread being baked? And so you think to yourself, oh, now you ask, when you start doing that, you can start asking questions of things that maybe you need to get validation for later down the line, and you can do that. And just notice again the freeing, the open feeling as a yes, the warmth going to that heart chakra, and then sometimes that clenching feeling that just kind of says no or doesn't feel right. Acknowledge that. So that is huge. Um, so yeah, I want to mention that. And then again, if you have any items of your loved ones, you can also pick those up and touch them and be observant of the information or the energy that they emit, to receiving from your clairs, your sense, your intuition, what you receive. I can remember once my mother gave me an ornament from my father's collection as a child, and something that obviously he was 10, I think, when I picked up. I picked up this ornament, I touched it, I didn't expect anything, but I was just like, you know what, that was it. I didn't have expectation. I touched it, and then I was blown because I started to see his mother, like putting a starting to see, I guess, grandmother putting, it looked like it was the 1940s, like early 50s, and she was putting like the star on the tree, and I heard her say his name in my head, and I saw her hand him this ornament, and then I saw the vision of him, and he walked up as a little kid and put it on the tree, and that's what I picked up. from just holding that ornament. Now, not everybody is going to get it to that extent, and that took time for me to get to that level. But I'm just saying, like, we can actually have these experiences, and they are real. They really are. You just have to be very open. You might get something very small, but you have to be open to that and be excited over that. And okay, so that's some little things you can do. And I'm going to get into a little bit more here in a minute. But when we go into decoding spirit symbols and metaphors, when I'm teaching mediumship and I'm teaching students how to receive, they're utilizing and learning, yes, I'm receiving from these clairs, but what do I do with this information? Is it everything that I'm receiving? Is it literal? Because I'm getting some weird feelings, some weird signs, some weird things that are happening. I get this color that pops up. What does that mean, Aerin? And it's like, well, this is the part where you're going to be in class for a while and you're going to practice for a while, because that is usually, this is on you and your relationship with spirit, your relationship with your interpretation in terms of your life experiences, your perceptions, your judgments, your beliefs. It's filtered through those clairs, filter through that. And so you have to kind of learn and navigate, what does this mean to me? And then sometimes when if you actually go down the line and go into what I'm doing and teaching, and the students are giving actual readings, they have to sometimes put that out there because it means something to the person they're reading. It can be like, do you understand that I keep seeing this, old blue boat? I feel like this person was boating. I feel like they loved boating. They were on the water, but I keep seeing this blue boat. Oh yeah, we had that boat back in the 80s. That was that we used to ride around Lake Erie on that boat all the time, and it's like, okay. So there was a significance, but sometimes you can see a boat and it could be a raft, and the person's going to be like, well, what's the raft? Okay, yeah, no, we didn't have a raft, but it just meant boating in general. It meant water, it meant boating. And so when we are actually learning to decode or understand what we're receiving through our clairs, I smell Italian food. I can taste Italian food. And yet your grandmother on your father's side was Italian and was always making like pasta and so forth. And you're thinking of her. And so you're like, wow, I can actually taste it, feel it. Like, that's my loved one. So those are some things that can kind of sometimes we get animals as symbols, like butterflies. And, sometimes for me, I'll get a butterfly. And of course, because of the work I do, I always think, oh, they represent the spirit world for me, Dragonflies also, same thing. Some of you get birds. I see cardinals. I always think of my loved ones. I'm like, oh, I think of that as a sign just from the universe, giving me love, and I truly appreciate it. Colors. So sometimes people wonder, why do I see the color yellow? And if you're thinking about, like, when I think of the color yellow, for me, for instance, this is green here on this presentation, but when I think of the color yellow, I always think of my mother, because she loved yellow, and she was just had that personality. It was always happy, beachy, and she just was very up. So when I think of her, I think of the color yellow. I think of her. So they can have representation. And then, of course, weather can be a symbol as well. So we can get lots of different ways of receiving, and hopefully that goes over some of it just lightly. Of course, if you wanted to experience more, stepping in, taking a class, finding some books, there's videos, there's stuff on Google, you can learn more about it. But for the all grins and giggles here, just getting into the simplicity of it, just to be able to feel your loved ones. Again, most of us here, we want to acknowledge our loved ones in some way. We want to know that they weren't gone forever. We want to know that they're still very much, even though we can't talk to them, we can feel their presence. We know their love and support is right there guiding us. So feeling your loved one's presence here is, spirits may make their presence known through energy shifts, physical sensations, the warmth, the tingling, the stuff like that, right? Energy sensations, like there to guess, the feeling of someone nearby when you feel like you're not alone. I think the way society has created us is that feeling not alone is scary. It is not. Our loved ones are always with us. So if you feel suddenly someone is with you, think of it as an angel, a guide, a loved one, and be appreciative. Let go of all the fear-based thinking that's out there. There is a lot that is fed to us. There's a lot of different belief systems, which they should be respected. But at the end of the day, they're still sometimes not full of love, and they can be full of more fear. So avoid the fear, go towards the love. Like attracts like. What you put out there, you become. So you put love out, you get love back. Emotional sensations, feeling loved, comforted, or receiving specific emotional messages. So sometimes when I'm thinking of my mother in spirit, I sometimes I can see her, sometimes I can't visually. It just depends on where I'm at that moment. But if I feel her and I acknowledge her and I talk out to her either out loud or I talk to her inside my own mind, I know she can hear me, and I acknowledge the way I feel when I put that information out. I just feel so much love. I feel so much like presence, and it moves me to tears, I'll be honest, because we miss our loved ones. And I think to myself, oh, I miss you so much. And it really carries a lot of weight with me. It's like almost a step back from the craziness of everyday society. And I think to myself, you're still here with me. I can feel you. I'm taking my time out to feel you. And I love that. So the biggest part though is trusting it. And it says here, trusting these sensations can help deepen your connection with spirit. Trusting is the hardest part. We will constantly try to, that ego of us will constantly try to say, no, you need to doubt that. That didn't happen. That's not real. You're full of it. You don't know what you're doing. You can't do this. And nothing could be further from the truth. You absolutely can. But it always starts with trust and faith. And the other part I tell people is if it's not always happening and you're not getting the signs when you want, let go, release expectation, and have patience. It does come. So some things to start to do when you want to get into your journey, if you really do want to get more into it or experience more or have more of a relationship with yourself, your senses, your intuition, building on your intuition to make better choices, is to start a practice, whether that is meditation. Some people love it. Some people are going to, usually when I start a beginner class on mediumship or psychic development or something, I'll tell them you have to start meditating, or well, you should. You don't have to do anything. And some people truly maybe don't even need meditation. They may already kind of, be on a slower mindset where they may be more observant of the world around them, where like if you're like me in most of society, Google does all the work for us. Our Alexas, our GPS takes us. We don't have to think anymore. So we kind of get into this boom boom boom, grab my phone, on the way, go go go, and we're not allowing ourselves to kind of have any time to just breathe. We say to ourselves, what is breathing? Right? We don't do that anymore. We're so busy going and what's the next thing we're going to do, moving to this path and this path, that we don't take the time out for ourselves, which is what we need in order to really better ourselves, to heal, to listen, and to make wise judgments. We have to listen to that mini brain, that gut, those feelings we get, to pay attention to how we respond and how we should react when people say, hey, I'm doing this. Do you want to be a part of it? Hey, there's a new job opportunity. Do you want to apply for it? Do you want to take this job? Okay? Instead of just going with, yes, I do, unless you feel it in your soul, unless it lifts you up and makes you be like, yes, I'm excited. It's that voice. It's that feeling that wants to register, and that's the one you need to listen to. Because sometimes immediately, whatever that response is, our body reacts, and that is our intuition, and that's the one we listen to. But in order for some people to do that, they have to practice more mindfulness. They have to practice meditation. And not all meditation has to be literally, like seriously, I would never be doing the work I'm doing if I had to do all day long. It does work, trust me, but it's usually for people that have been doing meditation for a while. But what I will say is there's lots of YouTubes, there's lots of, There's probably, even if you go to your library, they may even still have things that you can rent out there. There's the Gaia channel that has all kinds of neat mindfulness, tips and tricks. By all means, you do not have to be a perfect yogi to do meditation. So some people, I tell students, if you want to start out going and taking a walk in nature, and really don't, if you take your phone, keep it in your pocket, try to listen to the sounds of nature. Try to be observant. Sometimes it's a matter of going outside, sitting outside, taking in deep breaths, just being a part of that breath and just taking it in and feeling it. And then also paying attention to the sounds. Close your eyes. And as the sound comes towards you, see if you can actually paint the picture in your mind, or what do you receive? So let's say I'm sitting there, I'm being mindful, and I'm watching in my mind's eye the birds that I'm hearing. Okay, they might not look like the birds that are actually out there, but maybe my mind has painted the picture of what they look like, right? I sound like I'm probably painting a Bob Ross picture in my mind here, but hey, that's okay. It's just like, it's beautiful, it's serene. What does it do to my body? How does it relax me? How do I stop thinking of all the craziness that's going on out there in the world? It's being observant. Some people like Tai Chi. Some people like to sit at the beach and just listen to the waves. If you live by the beach, of course. But some people, they like to go out on their boats if they live on a lake, or they like to just sit at the lake and look. Water is such a conduit. Some people like to take a warm, hot bath, or a warm bath, and just kind of, be observant and let go and surrender to all the energy, just letting that energy just drop beside them. They don't have any worries. They can let their thoughts go. Some people like ballet. Some people like to do anything that helps them let go, surrender. Like, one great thing is to try lighting a candle and just sitting with that candle and being observant and learning focus upon that candle and surrendering to all the crazy thoughts that just keep, if they come into your head, you let a thought pass by. That's normal, because we're not dead, right? So we're not going to be able to quiet the mind. We're going to have to find a way to relax the mind. Be observant of our own thoughts, but yet let them pass by, so that we can, when we have a thought that comes from our subconscious, suddenly we're like, oh, I didn't think about that. That came to me. Many of us may get that when they're like, doing laundry or doing mundane tasks, or maybe when you're driving, you may go, oh, that's right. Okay, something that just surfaced you weren't thinking about. Those feelings, what is that like? That is our intuition. But when we are mindful, when we are in a state of peace, it's like when you're driving and you're kind of like mundane work and anything like that, things can come up. We go like, oh, wow, that's right, I forgot. Or you ask a question to the universe, you ask a question to your loved one, and you're looking for an answer. But if you are observant and you are mindful, suddenly that message comes through later, and you might hear it. You might suddenly have the answer to the question, like, you know what? I'm not going to take that job. I forgot. I don't like to drive. You know what? The traffic is terrible. You're right. Yeah, I don't want to. I was excited about it, but I'm not probably going to stay there for X, Y, and Z. Things suddenly become more clear with our intuition when we allow it in, when we surrendered and let go. So some people like to do grounding exercises, meaning they do like to go outside without, walk barefoot. Or some people like myself, we can visualize, if we're good with that, like going back, using that clairvoyance and seeing like roots growing from the bottoms of our feet down, down, down. So sometimes if I feel a little edgy or anxiety, or I feel like, let's say if I'm in a really, like I was in a restaurant actually yesterday, and there was people all around me. And I was like, hey, these people have a lot of dead people around them. And I started to feel like a little like flighty. I literally was like, okay, I don't have time to just walk outside. So what I did is I took in my deep breaths, and I visualized roots coming down into the bottoms of my feet, just out, 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 down, down, down. And I felt instantly more at peace, more peaceful, and more grounded. That's just a little example, but obviously my story could be something similar or come. But if you feel like nervous or edgy or just uppity, or like you just don't feel like you're in your body, you might want to try a grounding exercise. And some people like to clear their energy too. So that can be clearing. Sometimes I like to take a shower and just visualize the water coming down over me and clearing away all the debris, all the energy I might have picked up out in the world that I feel like is weighing me down. So sometimes I just like to clear that away, let it wash down the drain, just with intention, just with thought, with intention. Even you don't even have to visualize it if you don't want, or if you think you can't. You can just say, I am sending away all the energy that is not mine today. I just want to be at peace and let go. The other thing is journaling. That's really, really, really good. So every student of mine knows that I'm going to be like, journal, journal, journal. And they'll be like, yes, Aerin, I'm journaling. I swear I am. Finding time in the day to recognize your feelings, your energy, to release it down on paper, or to ask questions for guidance. You know, you have a higher self, you have guides, you have angels. You may not know them, and you don't have to get to know them by some of these people talk about their angels and their names and everything. It doesn't have to be you, but you have to always trust that there's a higher power and that there are those beside you walking next to you, ready to help you every day. So when you are journaling, you can kind of sometimes release the instincts and just write down whatever comes to you, whatever you feel, whatever you sense. And I tell students to do this because sometimes they are trying to get more into their intuition. And I will say, you know, at the end of the night, when your mind isn't as actively busy, right? Or early in the morning after you've stepped out of bed, because, you know, if I picked up a journal in the morning, I'd be like, oh, I'm right back to sleep. So there's just no way. So I would say is some people have to get up, get coffee, come back and sit. But it is nice to do it when you're not in a hustle, because you want to be able to just be at peace and ask those questions. Like, let's say you're questioning, something going on in your life is really bugging you, and you're like, I really need some advice on this, and I don't know what to trust. First of all, people will always feed you their thoughts, their opinions, but you have to trust what feels right for you. Okay, so I will say getting it on paper is great, recording your thoughts, getting messages inside those thoughts. It does work. It takes a while sometimes for some of us. It really teaches how to surrender. I remember I got certain pens because I couldn't take time to write. So I would get like flowing pens so that I could just kind of like write what I was feeling and not worry about how it was coming out. Or I used my computer and I just type what I was feeling. And sometimes I'd get words here and there, which was really strange to me. I'd be like, I didn't think that. That was really weird. And then I'd read it back after, and I would have I actually had a biblical message come through at one time. It was crazy. And I was like, what is that? And I looked it up and I was like, wow. But you really can learn a lot. You can, release a lot the more you surrender. And then sometimes what I like to tell students, if they want to increase their intuition as well, or start to trust it, is to find out, ask a question and say, let's say you did it at night, the night before you go to bed. And I'd say, ask, what should I know about tomorrow? Or leaving it kind of open, like, what will I experience tomorrow? And then, see what you write down. Let's say you see in your mind a red balloon. And any of my students that are here, they were like, okay, we know where she's going with this. But let's say you see a red balloon and you're like, okay, I don't know why I'm seeing a red balloon, but I'm going to write it down. And you get to work the next day and it's a coworker's birthday. Doesn't mean you're going to see a red balloon, but it could represent party. Somebody's got a cake for your coworker. Maybe even when you were sitting there journaling, you were tasting something sweet and you automatically thought of your last birthday or something, and you're like, I don't know, am I hungry? Do I need to get up and get that cake out of the refrigerator? And you're thinking, not necessarily. You could be hungry, but at the same point, it could mean something and you just didn't know it, and it meant something for the next day, especially if you were in that space gathering information. And it's really kind of a neat, because it may not be everything. You could have 30 things on that paper and you may think, well, you check it later on the next day and you're like, interesting, okay, I picked up I picked up Massachusetts license plate or Massachusetts, and I saw a license plate today from Massachusetts when I was sitting at the traffic light. It can be little things. They might not seem big, but that's okay. There is always a start, and you have to build trust. Some people like to use more forms of metaphysical devices, like, rods. There's the, have you ever seen the rod, the dowsing rod? Some people like those. Some people like pendulums, and asking questions, and that's based on idiomotor skills. So some people do like to tap into their intuition, ask a question, and then think, okay, I need some validation, and then they'll use things like oracle cards or tarot cards, or something else, some other form of a divination, like the dowsing rods, where they're originally meant for water, for looking for water, but a lot of people in paranormal will use them, and they'll ask questions like, if they cross, it means yes, and if it means, say no, to pull it open. And like I said, there's pendulums out there, so some people like to get into that, and there's absolutely, they can be very valid. They were very helpful for me. They were very eye-opening for me at the beginning, because I still didn't trust. I still didn't really, I'd be out there thinking, am I really talking to anybody? Even after I was getting a lot of validation, I still constantly questioned it. So I remember I had taken an oracle card class, and I had my deck of oracle cards, and I would use them sometimes, and they would kind of point me in direction. I'd be like, that's kind of weird. How did it know that? Like, I asked that question and it gave me that information. I wonder if it really works. It might work. Oh my gosh, that'd be weird if it works. How does it know? It's a deck of cards. Like, how does it know? Like, that's weird. And I can remember getting the greatest advice, or just the validation I needed that I was on the right path. And it was super helpful when I was really trying to increase my intuition, and I was trying to learn to trust it. I remember I was using this deck by Doreen Virtue, which I don't think is even out there anymore. If it is, it's like secondhand, just reprinted, because she got out of it. But it was my Archangel Michael cards, and I love Archangel Michael. I feel more at peace and more love. People would often say, like, how do you know you're working with the spirit world? It's like, I feel more love and more peace, and I believe now more than ever in a higher power, in God, for me. And it's like, what happened that day with the cards. I remember I pulled 3 cards. One was supposed to be the past. Anyone that knows this stuff, past, present, and future. And as I pulled the card, I remember it didn't give me the answer I wanted. Okay, anyone that's done this knows what I'm talking about, and they're like, okay, yeah, you wanted an answer, and you wanted it to be the answer you wanted, that your rational mind wants, not your subconscious mind that already knows and is connecting to your higher self, that's connected to the divine, then that's helping you draw the card. No, I wanted it the way I wanted it. So I remember feeling the presence, and I thought, this must be Archangel Michael. I can visualize him in my mind, and I'm giving him a card, and I'm sitting there at my kitchen table, and I'm like, okay, so this card right here, Archangel Michael, maybe you meant it in a different way. Maybe if I draw another card, humor me and let me draw another card, and that way you can give me more clarification. Because I was sure I was going to draw the card I wanted that was going to give me the validation. I was making it all in my head that it was all perfect. So I drew the next card. And did you know that Doreen Virtue has a sense of humor card in there? Yeah, yep. I drew it. And I went, well played. And I knew that I wasn't going to have it my way. So, it was very validating. And I think when I saw that card that day, my mouth dropped open. Like, holy crap. Like, you have a sense of humor too. Really, you do. And I thought, oh, wow, somebody's really here. They're really listening to me, because I literally said, humor me, and I was humored. So, I mean, you can use these forms of divination that if you like, you don't have to. But I do believe that being mindful in your everyday life, being an observer, don't just go down the road and say, oh, look, a tree, a house, a tree, you boom, 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 not really paying attention because you're on your phone. But let's say you're out for a walk, and you actually, you're paying attention. There's the old oak tree. It's been there. What does it know? What can it tell me? If I was that tree, what are some of the things that I might have witnessed in my life? Probably all the houses going up and, but I'm just saying, what would it be like if you were that tree? How many times have the animals been on that tree? The squirrels going up the tree. Maybe you see the birds on the tree. What is it like if you were that bird? Can you be observant enough to try to take a moment and feel what it might feel like to get into that space, you know? Just try it. And it's stopping and just not go, 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 but just allowing yourself to be. And that is truly huge when you're trying to increase your intuition and you're trying to pay attention to the small, to feel the small voice within you. Okay? All right. So finishing up here, some people like to create a sacred space. You don't have to. I used to always have the same place that I would meditate, but I can't say. James Van Prague, for those of you that know him, famous medium, writer, author, teacher as well, in film. He's known for like things like The Ghost Whisperer, is a producer. And I remember he would say, because I was in with just like two or three other people at the time in a class, and he's talking to me over Zoom. So I love Zoom. But he's talking to me in the class, and he's like, creating a sacred space. You have to like create your own little room and everything. And they know I have 6 kids at the time, so I remember. Yeah, I was in LA, and houses aren't very big unless you want to pay millions and millions of dollars. And so I remember being there, and one of my peers says, "I don't think Aerin may have a space, James. Do you know how many kids she has? I don't think she even has a closet." It was like, I'll use my bedroom. It's fine. And that's what I would use. I would use my bedroom until I had a space. Like I have my office now if I wish, but sometimes I still like to be in my bedroom. And I don't know, but that's my space to meditate. So sometimes people like to have a special space, creating it with candles or whatever. Maybe if you're trying to contact your loved ones, it's pictures of your loved one next to you or items of theirs that you want. You can do this. And for some people, it really helps create more of a tangible space for them. But it's not necessary too. Some people like to write letters to their loved ones. Okay. I once did this reading for this gentleman. I don't know. He was a beautiful soul, and he used to come to me for readings all the time. And this one time, his wife in spirit showed me that he had been writing letters to her constantly, and he was doing that to feel closer to her, to feel more in touch with her. And he thought, I'm never going to get answers from her. And when he came to me, I was surprised because I'm a remote viewer, so in spirit can sometimes take us on this mind journey, is what we call it, where we'll get visual impressions or clips of something, again, through clairvoyance. And I remember seeing, like, from behind him writing the letters at his desk. And I remember his wife kind of standing off to the side, like doing one of these, like showing me, like, I'm watching him, I'm listening to him. She wanted me to see that. And then I said, you put all her letters like on your left side drawer down too. And he's like, oh my God, how'd you know that? I'm like, well, she showed me that she's paying attention. She's listening. She's there to your words. She knows. And now you can't take my word for it, obviously, but I want you to know that every thought, every feeling, every word we say, you don't have to have a special person. You don't have to pay somebody to communicate that to your loved one. They hear you, they can feel you, they sense you, and they know what you're thinking. So if you are writing it out, it helps you, and they're there to actually witness it, and it's beautiful. So you can, again, create your sacred space, light a candle. Sometimes for, like a birthday, I used to light a candle for somebody and one of my loved ones. Meditative practices to invite spirit in, and then trusting your inner voice. So one thing I love to do with my students, with my beginner students, is for them to start to feel energy. And I'm going to tell you how to do this because of our time today. But something to consider and try is to sit in your space, okay? If you want to ground, like I said, seeing roots coming, breathing in, focusing on your breath. One thing I love to try though is, and this is great, is feel the energy directly in front of you. As you're in that state of peace, you're feeling your energy. And then feel the energy directly in front of you. Okay. That energy, is it heavy? Is it cold? What is there? Keep your eyes closed and just feel the subtleties, the differences. Okay. If you feel it, move to the right side. Okay. Move behind you and then move over here to the left and then move back to your center. And then when you're ready, invite spirit into your energy. So let's say I want to invite my mother into my energy. Or maybe you want to invite your partner or your child. You can invite them into your energy. You may notice what way they come in. You may not, but you may feel a sense of warmth. You may feel somebody's arms wrap around you, or you may just feel a slight tingle, maybe here. And you think, was that even that? Was that even them? Trust, experience, and just surrender to it. It's very subtle, but it's a great way to feel your loved one's energy, to experience your soul, your energy, and then to experience what it feels like to have the energy of spirit right there, right next to you. Okay, it's a great thing to try. So, growing your spiritual energy, listen, slow down, start relying more on your intuition. You know what? Any choices you've made in the past, whether they were through your rational mind or your intuition, feel them, trust them. Everything that happens to us happens for a reason. We may not always see it, we may not always understand it, but we have to learn to trust. There's always challenges. And like the song that I played at the beginning, The Climb, there's always going to be another mountain, but we can always find a way to move past it and to get over it. We just have to start trusting ourselves. Journaling, meditation, time in nature, and mindfulness. And that, my friends, is a huge, huge thing that's going to get you started. Start trusting your intuition. That will help you, strengthen your connection through meditation. You can ask those questions. Remember, ask the questions that you might not know. And then grow your awareness by paying attention to the signs. Don't ask, did I really see that? Trust you did. Start trusting it. And then you can start asking questions of your loved ones more and more and more and know what comes up. So sometimes you're going to get things through thoughts, symbols, visions. Sometimes you're going to feel it. Thoughts are going to pop up out of your head. Just don't overanalyze it and trust your impressions. Right? Thank you very much. That is pretty much concludes it right there. I'd love to take some questions if you have any. I do have about 15 minutes and then I do have to get off, but I would love to help anybody if they have any questions. I know it was a big presentation. It's a lot of information. But I do hope it was helpful. Well, Marissa, I'm going to turn it over to you.
That was so good.
Yeah. Thank you very much for allowing me to be a part of this.
Yes, that was awesome. I liked how you broke everything down in kind of like a glimpse of everything with mediumship, because you do need to know about the clairs, and you do need to know those subtle signs that spirit gives you, because not every, like you said, not every person's going to tap into it a specific way, and you can't be so judgmental on yourself because you perceive your world and your environment your way, not like everybody else. So you can't be hard on yourself if man, I can't hear them, but I feel them. That's okay.
Right.
I think that's beautiful that you described it all. And
Thank you. I appreciate that. Amelia, I see your name is up, or your hand is up.
I wanted to thank you so much. This was great. Thank you for your time and all the wonderful information.